Okay, we're going to get started here. We're going to talk about a concept I'm going to chat about, continuous ownership, how to make everyone a product owner. Why do you want to make people product owners in your organization? First, my shameless slide. So, I am a product manager at Oracle today. I graduated from Montana State University in 1987. You can do the math in computer science. I've held software development titles from QA to software development to lead developer to manager to director of software development at Right Now Technologies. So over 25 years of development experience. The last, started my own company, and in the last 6 years been in product management, Workiva, and I'm back at Oracle. What I'm going to say about, so why did I put this up here? I'll steal a line from Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. That's it. That maybe God's not omnipotent. That maybe he's just been around a while, and that's why he knows everything. And so I'm going to say that's, I've just been around. I've seen the big companies. You see Boeing up there. You see Oracle up there. Right Now Technologies when it was small, and then it grew large. Just kind of passing on this experience that I've seen and what I've tried to do with my development teams. We'll do our word cloud time here. I'm taking a guess, everybody's kind of in that agile mode. We talk about continuous development. We talk about continuous integration. We talk about continuous deployment, sprints, scrum, build, measure, learn, story mapping, iteration, ideation. All of these define the process. And then of course we have the tools. We have Jira, we have GitHub, we have all the other different tools that we have, to define those agile environments. What I want to talk about, and that's all great, that's what everybody does. What I want to talk about is that human aspect of building product. I want to have a conversation basically about people here. So, this is about continuous ownership. So, what is the definition of ownership? How do you define being an owner of a product or being an owner of that segment within that organization that you have? What are the qualities or attributes of an owner? What are your pet projects? I'm guaranteeing, I'll say 99.9%, 100% of you have some sort of side project that's not associated to your quote-unquote work that you have, but you have a pet project that you play with. Why do you have that? What is it that you own? So, qualities. Devin, what's the quality of ownership?
I guess, I don't know.
You don't know?
You got me on the spot.
I know I did. Let's go. How about pride? Caring about it. So you're excited about it. So we talk about qualities and about owners. Jade, anything? Investment. You have an investment about it. You have passion. So when you talk about ownership, whether it's what you work on, your side project, or even just stuff that you have at home. I have a motorcycle at home. I have a 2005 Victory motorcycle. I can talk about that forever. Why? I'm excited about it. I'm proud about it. I have passion about it. There's an element of commitment when cleaning it and making sure that it's in good running order. And you want to show it off. Your kids come home from school and they have that drawing in first grade, and it looks, who was that? Oh, that's you, Dad. And it's just this ugly looking teeth all over on the one side, kind of Picasso type thing. But you stick it up on the fridge and they're proud of it. So again, people who are owners of things, that's what they created. They are excited about it, and that's what you want to have in your organization and in your company. So first thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit about, this is the only time I'm going to talk about founders, and I'm going to talk about team members. And founders of the company. I get it. This is your baby. This is your company. This is your idea. I believe that with each person that you invite onto your team, into your organization, you need to instill that feeling of ownership of your product. I know it's yours. We get it. We understand. It's your product. But you want to instill that feeling of excitement, that feeling of passion, that feeling of commitment to your product. And in that way to take your product or your idea basically to the next level. As a founder, one of probably the worst thing is just say, hey, you don't know, you haven't been here, or if you've been, you're employee number 1, employee number 2, employee number 3, you haven't been here longer than I have. I get it. I will never be there longer than you. I think there was one time I came in like 4 days after another person. He said, oh, I've been here longer. It's 4 days. Come on, give me a break. And so, understand from different lenses. When you invite these people onto your team, you get different lenses, and that's why you want to be able to curate that. You want to be able to encourage that, kind of organically grow that. Talking to the team members, employee number N, for example. Well, I want to give you a call to action to creating ownership. Nobody's going to come in and say, hey, I want you to, I'm going to talk about creating ownership. But as an individual, you want to create ownership in the company because you want to be excited about what you're working on. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, are excited about what you're working on. But immerse, and how do you do that? I want you to immerse yourself into projects. I believe that there is a transition from project management into product management or product ownership. That's a natural progression. Notice one thing I said in the beginning. I said that I am a product manager. I don't outwardly say I'm a product owner. I will contend, that list of software companies that I work for and in software development, that I've always been a product owner. And even though I might have up and down times in my career, I would say that I've had a successful career. That's because, I was invested, I was excited, I had passion about the things that I've been working on. So as a team member, I want you to try to identify leadership opportunities within your organization. And it's not just a feature. I built this feature, and we'll talk a little bit about that, about fingerprinting. But also just, you have a new library. You have new technologies that's coming through, and everybody's working on new technology. Identify, hey, I want to take this and I want to run with it. Leadership opportunity could be just, hey, I'm a really good note taker. Let me just take notes. And then I'm going to disseminate that to the rest of the team. The thing I'm going to talk about here is situational leadership. That's kind of like, I'm going to mention this a lot of times. This is sort of like my secret sauce. To identify situational leadership. I had a conversation earlier about managers, and someone said, well, we shouldn't really have managers. I agree. I think everybody should be a manager. I think there should be situational leaderships within organizations. I'm going to throw up my Agile slide here. You can kind of just take a look at it. I make fun of Agile. I talk about Agile, and Agile obviously is a great thing. But I'll talk about development BA and development AA. When I talk about development BA is before Agile, and AA being after Agile. Before Agile, everybody wore hats. We wore 5, 6, 7 different hats. That was the product. In development, I was also the product manager. I was also the marketing guy. Sometimes I was the QA person. I was documentation. And I believe that in that environment, we were owners. You owned that process. And as great as Agile is, I believe that we now have specific jobs and specific tasks. I'm a Scrum Master, and that's what I do. I'm a product manager. I'm a UX designer. I'm a developer. I'm QA. I'm a specialized QA. So what I've noticed is, in my experiences, and it might not be in your experiences, is that I hear things like, well, that's not my job. I'm a Scrum Master, that's not my job. I'm a product manager. I don't test. I'm sorry. I just make PowerPoints and I draw on whiteboards. And that's what, it's just because that's not your title. I'm not, or hey, I don't have a certification for being a Scrum Master, that type of thing. Another thing I hear is, toss it over the wall. And I feel like, again, because we have these departmentalized positions, we feel that it's that mentality and it's assembly line. All right, the design, or the triad, the product manager and the UX guy and head QA or head manager, the scrum master, they get together and they decide, the designer, they decide, and okay, we're going to give it to the senior software developer. Then he's going to figure out how to take this and deliver it to his team, and then we're going to deliver it, we're going to throw it over the wall. And I hear that a lot. Well, we threw it over to QA. Well, we don't know where it's at. We don't know where this feature is at. QA's got it. Or you've incorporated new technology, and development knows how to do it, but is it a test harness? It's a new test harness or a new development process or a new QA process. Well, that's their problem. So I want to get out of that departmentalize, that whole assembly line. Like this is my box, and I'm going to just live in this box. The third thing here is lack of estimates and commitments. One of the biggest things when we go to Agile is we don't give dates. We don't give dates. You got to give a date. I'm sorry, but you got to give a date. You got investors out there. You got customers out there. There are people who want to get paid, people who want to make money. So I feel that one of the things with Agile is this idea of, well, I don't want to give a date. I don't want to give a commitment. And granted, no more. We're getting away from the, hey, I want you to build A, B, and C, and I want you to give it to me by Y. No, obviously you can't have X and Y. You want to say, hey, build me X. When can I have it? Or I want it by July 1st. What can you get to me? But don't be afraid to give you commitments. One of the things I'm finding is just in some of my development teams as of late is they lack in one quality that I see this as the best quality out there, which is estimates. I can guarantee that I can build this in 2 sprints, 3 weeks, a month, whatever it might be. So again, don't be afraid to deliver estimates. Don't say, hey, we don't give dates. It'll be done when it's done. While that sounds great, and you might disagree with me, I think that's something that we lack in this environment. So this is my utopian ownership diagram. Is when an idea starts, I'd like to think that the idea, as you move it along that assembly line process that I talked about before, that it goes to the next person and that you carry it along with you. You don't throw it over the wall, but you carry it with you. And it goes to the development manager or the product manager, and he breaks it down into stories. Okay, great. And it goes to the development manager, and then he delivers it to his team. And so the idea is that concept of ownership grows. And what I talk about is that human aspect. And I think in my synopsis, I talk about that the family or the fraternity of owners grow with each stage of that development process until it gets out the door. Like everybody gets it out the door. It's not just QA that says, hey, yeah, the build was green, ship it. But that everybody's involved in getting a product that's out the door. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and we talk about building product. And so now I want to kind of define how we've defined ownership and why I think ownership is valuable. So how do we instill ownership and how do we instill that excitement into our team members or just the team itself? And as founders, how do you do that to your team? And as team members, how do you inject yourself as an owner into the product? Obviously, with everything, there's a problem. It starts with the customer need. We do have a process. We have agile tools. We have technology. At some point, there's an output. And I'll just say output because I'm just going to make it generic. I'm not going to say it's a feature. I'm not going to say it's a product or an application. It's output. Is it good output? Depends. From here, then there's basically iteration that goes on. From a customer needs, there might be some enhancements. There's always defects. But you have that iteration between the problem and the process and generating an output on that. And many companies are successful on this. I'm not saying that this is bad. It's like, hey, we solved the problem. We're selling the problem. We're fixing issues. We've got a process. Everything's great. Everybody's getting paid. That's wonderful. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm trying to get to that next level of building what the sweet spot of what I would call a superior product. And there's one thing that I haven't added here, and it's there, and I just didn't add it. Because obviously, it just doesn't happen by itself. It's just not, hey, there's a product. There is people, and there are roles that are generated with people. So we have the process, we have the problem, we have the people, but what is that? How are that human aspect, again, I'm going back to that human aspect. How is that happening in your organization? Is it just the roles? I'm just doing my job. I'm doing what they tell me. I've got this story. I'm just going to fix, here's the acceptance criterion, and I'm just going to merge it to master. Or I'm going to integrate it into this integration branch. And I will say that if you have the right mix of the problem, the process, and defining the people and the roles, you got kind of that sweet spot. And that blue area to me is a sweet spot. That's taking that output and that's making it a superior output. Or if that's a product, it's a superior product. If that's a feature, it's a superior feature. It's just that much better. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Here you can tell, oh yeah, we built this, but it fits within the parameters. But did you think out, I'll use one of Evie's buzzwords, think outside the box. What else can it do? So in doing that, you identify a couple of sections, A and B, that are involved with people, that are interacting with the problem, with the customer's needs, that are interacting with the process. And so that's one of the things I want to focus on this discussion here today. And I'm not going to make it too much of a mystery. I'm not going to hang on to the end and talk to you about. The first one is empathy. So what is empathy? It's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. So you want to be able to encourage empathy. And I'm not just talking about customer empathy. I'm not talking about going out and finding out what's the customer's pain point and then solving that. But also internally. I want to talk about internal empathy and external empathy. How does QA testing my product? How's the documentation of the tech writer writing this piece? How is the product manager creating these stories? So we want to talk about empathy. And the second one I talk about is accountability. Basically being responsible for what you're delivering. Not just, hey, I built this, there you go. But again, you want to instill those qualities of ownership, those qualities of leadership in your organization, that excitement, that pride, that passion that you might have with that, with whatever it is that you deliver. Wow, easy to say. So, putting it all together, your problem, process, and people, talking about empathy, talking about accountability, and to generate an output. And that output, I think, is a sweet spot for a lot of organizations. So, okay, great, Willie. Now what? How? So let's focus on that first piece, on empathy. And one of the things I like to talk about with empathy is doing customer calls. And customer calls can happen with owners. Customer calls can happen, a lot of times happen with product managers. Depends on the size of your team. Who does the customer calls? Is it the marketing team? And talking to customers. What I want you to do with customer calls is invite team members. Don't just invite the senior developer, but invite that junior developer. And again, having them come in and just listen. You can mute it. As a founder, you can veto anything, right? It's like, hey, that's a great idea, or you can veto. But you want to identify customer empathy, not to the whole team, but to individuals. Again, don't get 17 people on the call. Pick one person. And this is where I'm going to get into what's called situational leadership. Pick that junior developer. Pick somebody who's just been in the door for 2 weeks. Get them on a customer call. They might not know what the heck you guys do for building out product, but they start hearing that and start feeling what that customer pain is, and they start getting that pride, excitement, passion, ownership qualities going forward. The second thing I talked about is dress rehearsals. I don't know how many people use dress rehearsals in their organization. I was waiting for J10 to come up. So dress rehearsals, put yourself in the shoes of your customer. What are the different personas that you are building your product for? Do you have different types of customers? You have the techie and the non-techie. If you just have one customer or one kind of persona, great. And that's just the human being. All right, I built a product with Gallatin Software Studios it's called Tickets Please for ticketing software. And the persona is just somebody who buys a ticket. But also, take a look at the demographics. I use my wife to buy tickets. I use my mom to buy tickets. So do dress rehearsals externally. Well, I want to say externally. Some people that are not part of your organization, but also part of your organization. It's like, okay, Bob, you're going to be this persona. You're going to be this persona. You're going to be the purchasing manager. You're going to be the, whatever the different characters that play within your organization or that play with your application. Put those in, run it through, timeline it, and have and again, they get that empathy. Oh man, as far as buying in my case, as far as buying a ticket, how hard was it for my mom to buy a ticket who's not very tech savvy? And then flipping that around, internal role reversals. Have your development, do some things with QA or write test plans. Have your product manager write documentation. I'm a horrible writer. Have me sit down and write documentation and put that out and put myself in the shoes of documentation. Put yourself in the shoes of QA. Put yourself in the shoes of software development if you're not developers. And you kind of understand what people have to do. You understand, once you start feeling that, you feel that empathy and that kind of shared understanding. Well, I'll use that term of shared understanding across your organization of what people actually do within your organization. Talk about accountability. I always talk about a no one left behind, motto, the Marines or the Army Rangers. You want to move as a team. You want to help one another in creating your development platforms. If you get a new library in, you don't just say, hey, we got a new library, and you just got to go out to GitHub or go to this wiki page or whatever it might be and click on this link. Here's a link. But help people install new software, help people install new libraries, help people install new applications. That agile process where we're talking about those tools, help them. Don't just say, oh, that's, QA hasn't tested our product or the build's down. Oh, I'm writing code, but the build's down. Well, go over and help fix the Jenkins build. Go over and help build that. Go over and help fix those test plans, whatever that might be. Move as a team. We talked about defining commitments. Don't be afraid to make commitments. Don't be afraid you might make mistakes, but you'll start to understand how quick you can go and how quick your team can go. I think one of the Agile points, it's like, welcome to Agile, where points don't matter. I had to laugh at one of the teams that, not one of my teams, but they're like, hey, we did 87 points this week. It's like, great. I'm going to start marking mine, like 40 points each. I'm going to do 120 points next week, I bet you. So again, define that commitment. When are you going to deliver that X by Y? Under the area of training, don't have a sink or swim mentality. Have some sort of enablement. Somebody new comes in. Don't just sit there and go, hey, here's your laptop, here's the Wi-Fi password, here's all these things, keyboard, go at it. Don't have a sink or swim mentality. Do some training, do some enablement. Train your documentation people so they actually know what it is that you're building. Delegate properly. And this is for more of the leadership. Delegate an output. Don't delegate a problem. Say, hey, I want you to build this. And it might be so slight, but if I'm telling someone to build an output, that's kind of ownership. If I'm telling them to fix this problem, it's like I'm just giving them crap to fix. And don't abandon them. That's probably one of the biggest things. As a leader, don't abandon. When you delegate properly, you delegate to someone, don't abandon them. What's interesting is And here's where I think you start to create what I call situational leaders. This is where you start to cultivate that ownership qualities that you want in all of your team members. And that's where I'm talking about continuous ownership. What was interesting is when I ran a development team over at Right Now Technologies, we had a lot of these processes that were just, frankly, just really crappy. Nobody wanted to do them. Everybody wanted to do the cool new features. So what I did is I built what's called the Golden Throne Award. Golden Throne Award was a piece of block with toilet paper holder, and a toilet. And I said, and then every week I recognized that person who was that situational leader. It could be the junior guy, it could be the senior guy, who just kind of went out and cleaned up the crap. And I had them write their name on the back. And everybody's, okay, that's cute, that's fun. Years later, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm looking up one of my old developers, and then on LinkedIn, it's like 3-time recipient of the Golden Throne Award. Okay, but he owned it. That maybe at the time I didn't know this, but he owned that process and he was proud. And he had something to show off. That's that pet project or whatever it is. Displayed it proudly on his desk, and he had his name written on the back 3 times. And it's great. So again, don't underestimate those little things of assigning projects and awarding that type of implementation. So this is I'll call this the secret sauce. You got empathy, and you got accountability. And my secret sauce on here is situational leadership. And I know a lot of companies do this. And I always talk about this with my team. I'm happy to hear that Devin over at Figure is talking about how they want to put fingerprint. Talk about ownership and putting their fingerprint into the product. Because when you start putting your fingerprint into the product, that's when you start becoming an owner. And how do you do that? People have that 10 or 20% day, 1 day per sprint, or 2 days per sprint, whatever it might be. Hackathons, code jams, concept cars. Make it relevant. Don't just say, oh, we just build that. And as a founder, as an owner, try to roll something in. It could be just very little. But you'd be surprised at how, it doesn't have to be huge features. And of course, you can veto some of these crazy ideas. It could be a small feature. But you'd be surprised at what your team would be going, hey, what is it that you do? Well, I do this and this and this for this company, but I built this. Even if it's just color, I did this, and that's the utopian piece where you want to get to is someone to say, I did this, and you do a show and tell. With that. Identify champions within your organization. Again, situational leadership. Identify champions. And I talk about that as far as process. I've kind of repeated this a couple times internally. Identify a champion. And it doesn't have to be the same person. Switch it around. As well as external, with features. If somebody came up with an idea with a hackathon, I've done this a couple of times with my teams, they come up with a great idea, and I said, that's great. I want you in the design meeting. Just because you created it, I'm not going to say, okay, that was a great idea. Let me take your video, or let me take your sample code, and let me go off and I'm going to create it. We invite them into the design meeting, and we create that. We get them on a call with customers. Maybe they don't say anything, but it's like, hey, we're looking at building this feature. What is it, how does this look? How do you like this? And then we get into the development. Okay, well, let's take the stories. Let's break them down. Let's get them into consumable places. And again, this is somebody who's just been with the company for 6 months or 6 weeks. And then it gets to it, then they might get to work on a little bit of it. But then, people are coming to them and saying, hey, how did you see this working? Or, actually in the application. So again, let your team members run with it. And what I believe is when you create that situational leadership within your organization, you create pride, you create excitement, you create that attitude, and you create that passion within your organization. So taking a look at this, again, just to recap, kind of ran through this because Evie kind of gave me 7 seconds off, and I want to leave some opportunities for questions afterwards. But take a look at your organization. Take a look at the people and how you define the roles. And is there just like one leader in your organization and a bunch of people who say, hey, just tell me what to build. I don't care. Tell me what to build. If you have some people that say in your organization, I don't care. Just tell me what to build. No. Are they the right persons for that organization? Because you want people who want to be owners. You want people who have pride and excitement and passion that says, hey, I want to build this. I want to be a part of this team. I want to go build this thing. I've got an idea about how to make this product better. Again, going back to the founders and the owners. This is your baby. This is your idea. This is your company. This is your organization. How do you get that same feeling that when you first built it, long ago, and it was just an idea, how do you get that feeling amongst the dozen, 2 dozen, several hundred people that you can have in your organization? So empathy, accountability, and then I think the secret sauce is situational leadership. Questions?